I'm Russell Edwards. I'm here today at the site of Leavesden Asylum with Martin, and today we're going to have a tour round what's left of old Leavesden Asylum. So Martin, can you tell us where we are precisely, please?
Where we are right now, Russell, is we're in front of what was the old administration building for the Leavesden Asylum. It was originally called Leavesden Asylum for Idiots and Imbeciles. It was built based on the Metropolitan Asylum Board, which was formed in 1868, and it was really at that time created for the care and taking off the streets of the people that were homeless and had learning disabilities or mental health issues in London, the north part of London. Leavesden Hospital was one of 6 facilities that were built by the Metropolitan Asylum Board, and people used to say, oh, calling it an asylum, lunatic asylum, that's horrible. But back in the days in 1868, Metropolitan Asylum Board was actually living by their name, because the true definition of asylum is a safe place of refuge. And that's what they were building for these people in the streets of London. They were actually building a safe place of refuge for them. So where we are is at Leavesden Asylum, as it was originally called, Leavesden Asylum for Idiots and Imbeciles. It was completed in 1870. What we see behind us now is the administration building, so that would have been 3 floors there. First floor would have been just storage and everything, because they didn't have underground basements to store food and dry goods, so they would have stored them there. The first floor would have been your administration wing, so the head surgeon would have been there, the head clerks, all the head nurses. If you were single and you worked on site here, you had a flat up above on the 3rd floor, so that's where you had all the matrons and any single individuals that were working here, upper management. When it opened in October 1st of 1870, this facility held 1,968 patients. It had a staff of about 240, so there was a little over 2,300 people living in this area. The whole site covered 84 acres. It was north of Watford, about 3 miles. It was built on what at that time was Asylum Road, because it was the only road that came from Watford all the way up to the asylum. So they called it Asylum Road right up until 1947, 1949, and then it's reintroduced as College Road, because at that time there were 3 nursing colleges and 2 industrial colleges here. So they thought, well, rather than Asylum Road, we're going to call it College Road. And so when the NHS was formed in 1949 and took over the facility, then they decided to call it College Road. So that's how that all got started. We also have here some of the other buildings that are on site. The old recreation hall, which is right next to the administration wing. That was built in 1891 for the purpose of providing recreation as a therapy method for the patients that were committed here. So they started doing recreation. They actually allocated £50 a year for the purchase of cards and board games. So they had something to do. It was actually considered quite the social event. They had staff bands, they had staff pantos, they had inmate bands that would play here, and it was considered quite the thing to come out to the recreation hall at the old Leavesden Hospital for an evening of entertainment or to see a panto or something. So yeah, it was quite the thing. We have some records of a steam train that used to run through here. So people would come by horse and cart, steam train, come up here, see a show. They were having cinemas here until 1912, when the projector burned down, caught fire, and they decided this wasn't a good idea. So some of the other local historic things that happened in this building: in 1950, they had the very first performance of the Abbots Langley, Gilbert and Sullivan Society. So they performed here at the Recreation Hall at Leavesden Hospital for many years, until they started performing at Henderson Hall in town. So there was quite a lot of things. They had services for the dead provided in the hall. They actually had patients that had services there, staff that had services there. They would have wedding receptions there. We have one old photograph from 1937. It was an absolute ornate, very detailed, very rich wood dance floor. I mean, it was quite the place, crystal chandeliers and everything. So even though it was a facility, medical facility, they still had, quite the showplace there in the recreation hall. So one of the other facilities that we have just behind us here is the old chapel. That was built originally 1868 to 1870. It's now owned by a company called Demand, which is design and manufacture for the disabled. So in theory, we still have a medical facility on this site 147 years after it was originally built in 1870. Wow. So it's quite historic. So
yeah, thank you very much. And so with Demand, the chapel, yep, the site that we're looking at, really of interest to me, because this is where the man proved to be the murderer known as Jack the Ripper was incarcerated in 1894.
Yep.
Is there much that you know about that story?
Well, I've known as much as not as obviously as much as the person who wrote the book, but no, we do know that Aaron Kosminski was the individual. He was known to the Metropolitan Police at the time of the murders. He was committed to Mile End facility by his brother Wolfgang at the time. He stayed there. He was then recommitted. He went to Colony Hatch. He was committed to Colony Hatch. 1894, so he was transferred to Leavesden in 1894. He stayed here. He worked actually earning up to 26 shillings a week as a patient here at the hospital. We do have records in the 1901 census of Aaron Kosminski being here at the hospital, and we do have a death certificate that says he died at the hospital March 25th, 1919. For a long time, we used to be able to speculate that he may actually be buried in the cemetery here. We have one of 3 cemeteries. We've just recently discovered that one of the cemeteries is actually used as a mass grave, which was another mystery of Leavesden Hospital that we've recently solved. So Aaron Kosminski was here. He did pass away in 1919. We know the area of the graveyard that he would have been in if he passed away in that time, but we also have a record where the body was actually transferred to his brother, and we believe he's now buried in West Ham Cemetery. But if you're a good conspiracy theorist, you'll notice that on the records there, you can't read the name on the tombstone in West Ham Cemetery, East Ham Cemetery. So you can't read the actual name on there, and they actually speculate that it's been spelt incorrectly. So the speculation is that it's actually his cousin that's buried here, and the real Aaron Kosminski, who is most likely Jack the Ripper, still may be buried in our cemetery. At least that's the story we like to tell everybody locally.
Wow. Yes, you're correct. He was taken by wolf. It was the cemetery was in East Ham Cemetery. That's absolutely correct.
Yep.
And of course, it was in 1919 when he passed away.
Yep.
Now, the fascinating story is that I've only just recently found out, actually speaking to you, Martin, that this is still here.
Yes.
So could you just kindly tell us? We've got a building to the far, just sort of tucked away, and for the camera's purposes, far left. That's really where the male, because could you tell us a little bit about where the males were brought and where the females were brought?
Well, it might be better if we just maybe take a short walk over there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we can just pick up over there, and you'll get an idea of where all the buildings were and where most likely Aaron Kosminski was actually housed as a patient here.
Thank you very much.